They hadn't lingered much longer at 79's as Wolfie had received a comm call from General Kuhn regretfully requesting his presence on board the Triumphant to ready for their deployment in search of the new separatist weapon they were hunting. They'd parted with hopeful thoughts of another get-together, this one to include Bly and Rex as well. The general had reiterated his promise to get them all leave together, and even though the night had been tumultuous in places, all of Cody's squad still had positive feelings about the general's potential success in following through. The negotiator shipped out early the next morning, resupplied and fully loaded for war. Once again, they were en route to the new supply lanes, still supporting the Outer Rim and providing cover to the freighters that shipped all of their supplies. With the new staging area in Toydaria all set up and operating, it was easy for them to move vital items throughout the Outer Rim theater of war. Despite all this, Cody still felt a healthy amount of trepidation, and all of it was now firmly centered on Wolf. Something about his bod's mission was not sitting right with him, in addition to all of the awkward feelings their night at 79's had dredged up. Avoidance was the name of the game he was currently playing in regards to his general. He didn't want to deal with the fallout and had firmly shoved all of the trouble to the back of his mind and slammed the lid down on it. On success. He would just deal with it later. A week had passed with he and General Kenobi walking on eggshells around each other. Cody had waffled between bitterly regretting his actions towards his general and being inordinately pleased with himself that he'd even managed to say what he had at all. There was a small, vindictive part of him that liked the fact he'd managed to unsettle Obi-Wan, a kind of strange payback for denying their feelings for so long, but Cody actively shoved that bitter voice hard out of his mind. The whole night was like a high-speed chase, filled with highs and lows and no small amount of emotional whiplash. He was glad his brothers liked Obi-Wan, but less glad about what had occurred around that meeting. Ever since he'd spoken to Slick in the infirmary on Christophsis, it felt like there was a snarling animal prowling back and forth in his chest. He was struggling with reconciling his loyalty to the Republic with the way that very same Republic treated him. Watching Kaz go about his life attached to the General's side certainly drew a very startling contrast that made him burn with frustrated rage. He simultaneously wanted to stay and to flee and take his shot at freedom where he could. The guilt of abandoning his brothers, of abandoning Obi-Wan and Kaz made leaving entirely untenable, but it barely made staying palatable. He knew he needed to work it out, to find a way to still fight and do his job. The old motivation of fighting for the Republic like he was trained to was no longer enough, and he was reasonable enough to realize that he needed something else, something more personal to fight for before his lack of motivation led to consequences. Obi-Wan's smiling face floated before his mind's eye, followed by Kaz's eager grin and Rex's devilish smirk as Cody stared down at the datapad in his hands, lost in his thoughts. Cody heaved a sigh, setting the pad down and letting his head fall onto the table, resting his forehead on the cool durastial, arms across his thighs. Family was certainly a noble motivation. Jango had fought for his family, as had his father before him. Cody would just be following in a very long line of men who had done the exact same. If they won, if they ended the war, there would be no reason to run. They'd all be free. His eyes drifted shut of their own accord, and Cody found himself reaching out for the Force in a very uncharacteristic motion. He hardly ever did this, not accustomed to sinking into a meditation to calm his mind, not used to communing with the Force in any capacity. In fact, he had spent most of his time up until a couple months ago actively suppressing his own connection to the Force. Maybe, he thought idly, I should have kept doing that. The responsibility that came along with using the Force was starting to weigh heavily on him. Unlike Kaz, he always seemed to be on the edge of anger and violence. He knew exactly where that road would lead him, but it was like he couldn't stop himself from taking steps down it. Fluttering around him, the Force pushed back at him, filling into the open spaces of his mind as Cody sat there with his head on the desk, avoiding his paperwork. It prodded and poked at him, tugging at the emotions he was holding close inside his chest. Cody almost rebuffed it before he checked that impulse and instead loosened his grip. For a moment, nothing happened, then suddenly, Cody felt a strange pulling sensation as those feelings oozed out of him like sap from a tree. Tension fled from his shoulders and his head pressed more heavily onto the desk. It felt like a weight had been lifted off his ribs, like his diaphragm could expand all the way as he breathed. The whittling, writhing snakes of his anger and rage stilled, and the molten core at the center of him cooled. It annoyed him that maybe the general had been right, and he'd been needing to do this for a while now. He wasn't a Jedi. He didn't want to be a Jedi, and it felt like using their mental maintenance techniques was surrendering to the enemy. He wasn't sure he wanted to do it, even if it would keep him from exploding in rage. That thought made him feel terrible, and Kaz's frightened face that night with Slick flashed into his mind again. No, he would do this and more to keep Kaz, Rex, and Obi-Wan safe. There was no other option. He would just have to swallow his pride and do what was required of him, just like he always did. Of course, that was the moment the door to his quarters chimed. Sighing heavily, Cody pushed up from the desk and went to the door, keying it open. On the other side was Obi-Wan, and he looked contrite, yet firm. Cody stepped back and motioned his general inside, triggering the door closed as he did. Obi-Wan walked into the room, standing idly by the end of the desk, eyes looking everywhere but Cody, feet shifting just the slightest bit and arms awkwardly by his sides. "What can I do for you, sir?" Cody said, moving to stand on the other end of the desk with his arms crossed over his chest. He wasn't wearing the top half of his armor and most of the bottom of it either, just his boots, shin guards, and utility belt. He'd been elbow deep in form work for the better part of the afternoon. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Commander," Obi-Wan said, genuinely apologetic. He took in a deep breath, steeling himself, and folded his arms, fingers across his elbows. "But we've received a troubling transmission from Anakin." Cody felt alarm lance through him, and he wasn't sure if it was for Rex or Wolf. "What happened, General?" "Anakin, Ahsoka, and Rex are fine," Obi-Wan immediately hastened to assure. He swallowed, right hand coming up to play with his beard. "No, I'm afraid we've lost contact with the 104th. Master Plo and the Triumphant are not answering comms calls." "OSIC," Cody thought. "OSIC, OSIC, OSIC." "What was their last known location, sir?" "The Abrogado system," Obi-Wan replied solemnly. "OSIC," Cody hissed before he could stop himself. Spinning, he stepped swiftly over to his footlocker and started donning his armor. "Are we being sent there?" "No, I'm afraid not." Obi-Wan rubbed his hand over his face. "It is extremely likely that they encountered that new warship. And, given the events of the last few weeks surrounding that ship, there is a very low percentage of survivors. With that, we are to instead pursue the ship itself. We are meeting with the rest of the fleet to intercept." Cody paused, his right vambrace held in loose fingers, feeling like he'd been stabbed or burned in the chest. "So they aren't even going to check. We're just assuming Wolfie and the rest are dead?" I argued against it. Obi-Wan looked haggard, bags under his eyes, lines on his face, and shoulders slumped. "But the Council and the Chancellor wouldn't hear it. The priority is that new battleship." Cody barely checked the impulse to fling his vambrace at the wall and instead snapped it into place with far more force than needed. "So, that's it then. An entire fleet, a battalion of Vode, and a Jedi Master lost with no attempts at recovery." "Yes, that's criffing banter shit, sir," Cody burst out, no longer able to contain it. He gestured wildly in the air, his upper armor half on and a dangerous look in his eyes. "We should be out looking for them. I agree," Obi-Wan said tartly, his teeth grinding in his own frustration. "But we've been ordered not to." Cody stopped, breathing heavily, his shoulders rising and falling visibly. He snapped the rest of his armor on and hefted his helmet under his left arm. He stood there for a moment, simply breathing, pulling on his shields and getting control of himself. He turned to Obi-Wan with a dark scowl on his face. "I don't like it." "Neither do I." Obi-Wan sighed heavily and scrubbed a hand through his hair. He gave Cody an apologetic look. "However, I don't think all hope is lost. Anakin seemed like he was planning something, and if not him, Ahsoka certainly was. We may not be able to assist, but—" Cody felt his shoulders relax a fraction. "But someone else can." "Yes, I still don't like it, nor do I." Shaking his head, Cody headed for the door to his quarters. "I guess we'd better get to the bridge and handle whatever mayhem General Skywalker cooks up." "My thoughts exactly," Obi-Wan said as he hurried after his commander. Getting to the bridge and handling the mayhem turned into a few hours of tense holocalls between them, the Council and Skywalker, until that glorious moment when Skywalker contacted them with the news he'd found survivors. That elation was short-lived when it was discovered the total number of souls saved was 4. Wolf, Sinker, Boost, and General Plo Koon managed to barely cling to their own existence through some daring heroics. They were now all safely on board the Resolute, and Cody, Obi-Wan, and Kaz had taken a quick shuttle ride over. Ostensibly, General Kenobi was the only one that needed to go, as he was intending to meet with his fellow council member, but Kaz had given Obi-Wan the sad Toka eyes about seeing Rex and Ahsoka, and Cody had dearly wanted to get his arms around Wolfa and smother him in his relief. So, away they all went. The ride was short and sweet, and before Cody knew it, they were disembarking into the familiar hangar bay of the Resolute. Rex was there to greet them, and his face perked up considerably when he caught sight of both Cody and Kaz. Cody made a beeline for him and clasped his hand on Rex's forearm, holding tightly. "Hey, Rex," Cody said, offering him a strained smile. "How is he?" "Could have been way worse," Rex answered, knowing immediately who Cody was asking for. He gripped Cody's arm back, then let go. He's in the med bay getting checked out. Some mild vacuum exposure and oxygen deprivation from the escape pod losing power, but he's otherwise fine. He looked over his older brother's shoulder and nodded at Obi-Wan. General, good to see you. And you too, kid. It's good to see you as well, Rex, Obi-Wan said kindly, not minding at all that Cody had been prioritized over himself. Sukwai, Rex, Kaz said, darting in to grab Rex's arm in the same way as Cody. He grinned up at the blonde captain. Good to see you. Sukui, Kazika. Rex grinned back at him, grasped his smaller arm tightly, and then let go. Nice to not be talking over a comm call. He looked back up at Cody and twitched a thumb over his shoulder. Simone, I'll take you to the med bay. That's where everyone is right now anyway. General Skywalker and General Kuhn are driving Kix crazy. Is Ahsoka there? Kaz asked, following Rex eagerly, Cody and Obi-Wan trailing behind. Also, is Wolfa going to be okay? Yes, and yes, Rex answered confidently. Kaz sagged like a puppet with its strings cut, his relief wiggling out of him and into the Force. Go it. Ooh. Good. They were silent for the rest of the short trip. Entering into the med bay on the Resolute was a lot like what Cody imagined walking into an alternate dimension would be like. It was the same exact layout and setup, with all the same equipment, except Kix had put his own touches on the place, and his junior medics ran things differently than Helix's did. They had more of some supplies and less of others, each chief medical officer preferring to do things in their own way with their own style. It was easy to think they'd be the same as Kix and Helix worked together frequently, so stepping into the room was jarring. In the far left corner, a medium-sized group was clustered around 3 beds. General Kuhn was standing by the head of Wolf's bed, his face tilted down towards his commander in concern. Wolf was the odd man out in his soft-shell grays. Sinker and Boost were in their armor and seemed to be in slightly better shape than Wolf himself. Ahsoka was right next to Master Plo, and General Skywalker was at the end of the bed interrogating Kix. Are you sure? Exposure to the vacuum of space. General, Kix snapped, crossing his arms and glaring at Skywalker. Which of us is the trained medic? Oh, that's right, me. It's fine. Commander Wolf, Sergeant Sinker, and Corporal Boost will be fine. They just need rest, warmth, and fluids, sir. Cody. Wolfie had sat up and turned his head just at that moment, the relief in his eyes almost palpable. Wolf? Cody jogged over, darting to the other side of the bed opposite Wolf's general and scooped up his batchmate in a fierce hug. He tucked his face into the space between Wolf's neck and shoulder. Criff, I'm glad you're all right. Yeah, me too, Wolf whispered, resting his forehead on Cody's temple. He pushed back after a moment, looking his batchmate in the eyes. He gulped, the pain in his eyes like a physical thing. It's just us, Cody. We couldn't. There was nothing we could do. They hunted us down like rats. I know, Cody said quietly. Hands on either side of Wolf's face, he looked his brother in the eyes, his own blazing with determination. We'll take it down. We'll destroy that ship and Grievous along with it. Criff, yes we will, Wolf growled back, anger written in the lines of his face and glowing in his brown eyes. Cody pulled him into a quick covenant, then let go and stepped back. He acknowledged General Kuhn and Ahsoka with a sharp nod. General, Commander, I am glad you are here, Commander Cody, Plo Koon said, sounding infinitely exhausted. It was easy to tell the Keldor Master was ready to drop, but fighting it with judicious use of the Force. He gestured to Wolf, Boost, and Sinker. For their sake. As am I, sir, Cody replied simply. He turned to Kix and interrupted his hissed argument with General Skywalker. Are they good to head to the barracks? Kix's head snapped in Cody's direction, and he nodded. Yes, sir, Commander. They're released. Light duty for the next 48 hours. He turned his formidable glare onto Wolf. I mean it. I don't want to see you 3 anywhere but the mess hall, the rec room, and the barracks. Got it? Yeah, copy that, Kix, Wolf said quietly, eyes fixed on his lap. Rex and I will take you there, Cody said, tone brooking no argument. He slid his shoulder under Wolf's left arm, his hands fisting in the material of Wolf's uniform jacket. Let's go. Wolf slid easily from the hospital bed with Cody's help. Sinker and Boost were able to get up on their own and shuffled close to Rex, waiting. Cody took most of his batchmates' weight and started the shuffling journey to the barracks. He moved around the bed and over to his own general and Kaz. I'll be back on board the Negotiator when you need me, sir, Cody said. Of course, Cody, Obi-Wan said quickly. I suspect we'll be here for a while, hammering out the details of our next move. I will try to give you some time. He gave Wolf a small, comforting smile. I am glad you are all right, Wolf. And I'm sorry for your loss. Nu kiradik shitabeka hajla. Forentai, General, Wolf whispered back, face blank as stone and eyes haunted. Go. Get some rest. Obi-Wan nodded grimly at Cody. I'll give you a few hours, Cody. If you need me, calm me. Yes, sir, Cody replied, shoulders dropping a little in relief. With that, Cody, Rex, and their brothers moved out of the infirmary and on towards the barracks, leaving only the Jedi and Kix in their wake. Kaz watched them go, eyes shining and full of empathy. He could feel their pain wafting out of them like a terrible smell. It suffused the air like a cloying mist. Closing the hatch on his escape pod, Kaz retreated behind his shields, knowing that there was work yet to be done. He could help here, and he could not currently help Cody. We should head to the conference room, Anakin said into the quiet of Rex and Cody's departure. Yes, I imagine we have much to discuss, Master Plo said idly, eyes fixed on the door that Wolfie, Boost, and Sinker had left out of. He was loath to let them leave his sight. They were the only ones left, but he knew that Commander Cody and Captain Rex could do much more for Wolf and his brothers than he could. Kaz, Ahsoka, why don't you head down to one of the training rooms? Obi-Wan said as they all collectively started to leave the infirmary. It will probably do you both some good. There's not much for you in this meeting, I don't think. I agree, Anakin said, shooting Obi-Wan a grateful look. He nudged Ahsoka lightly with his arm and grinned down at her. Besides, I'm sure Kaz could use some of your help. Ahsoka looked a little miffed to be missing a planning session, but she also knew that anything they would talk about would be related to a space battle, and she had nothing at all of value to contribute to such a discussion. Her time would truly be better spent with Kaz. She smiled over at Master Plo, squeezed his wrist gently in comfort, then turned to her fellow Padawan. Yeah, they're right. Come on, I'll take you to the training deck. Kaz looked unsure, but after an encouraging nod from Obi-Wan, he relented. He smiled at Ahsoka. Is it on the same deck as the one on the Negotiator? Yeah, should be pretty similar, Ahsoka answered with a shrug as they stepped out into the hallway. Great, let's go. Kaz bowed quickly to Master Plo. It was good to see you, Master Plo, though I wish it were under better circumstances. Likewise, young Kaz, Plo Koon gently inclined his head. Kaz gave him a small smile, then turned and followed Ahsoka down the hallway towards the lift. He wanted to be involved with the debrief and plan, but he was also eager for his very first spar against someone who was close to his age and skill level. He wanted to finally spend actual time with Ahsoka as opposed to brief exchanges over holocall when Cody talked to Rex. He wanted to get to know her. He could tell in the Force that she would be a good friend and a good resource for questions that he just did not want to ask his master. So, Ahsoka said, breaking the silence as they walked through the ship. I heard you went toe-to-toe with Ventress. How was that? Kaz shrugged, hands reaching up to grasp the tops of his chest plate. He'd chosen to wear his armor with his new Jedi-provided cute, as he was on the ship. It was tough. And a little frightening, he quirked a curious eyebrow back at her. I heard you had a run-in with Count Dooku on Tatooine. How was that? Yeah, that sucked, Ahsoka breathed out with a wince. I don't ever want to do that again. I want a real lightsaber and some more practice before I get another crack at her, Kaz said, scowling at the Durasteel decking under their feet. You really need to go to Ilum, Ahsoka agreed. You've been there, haven't you? When she nodded. Yes, Kaz continued. What's it like? It's interesting, Ahsoka said as they stepped into the lift. There were already a handful of troopers inside, and they shuffled over to accommodate the two Padawans. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, Kaz shuffled from foot to foot, giving Ahsoka a wary look. Well, it's neither, really, Ahsoka shrugged at him. Ilum is a test. It's different for every Jedi that goes there. What happened to me won't happen to you. I'd still like to hear your experience, or any tips you have. Master Obi-Wan wants to go the moment we can sneak away for a day or two. I don't really want to talk about my experience, Ahsoka told him regretfully. Most Jedi won't tell you that. It's kind of personal, but I can at least give you a few hints and a general rundown. I'll take it, Kaz said as they stepped out of the lift and onto the deck with the training rooms. It looked the same as the Negotiator so far, so he didn't feel the need to pay strict attention to where they were going. The path to the training rooms was a well-worn groove in his brain. Ilum is an ice planet, Ahsoka said, talking with her hands as she did, and the entrance to the Kyber Caves isn't always available. You have a time limit to find your crystal, or else you'll be stuck in there for a while. I could get stuck, Kaz squeaked out. Yeah, the older Padawans always like to scare the initiates with stories of younglings that have gotten stuck in the caves, Ahsoka said with a roll of her eyes. But, between you and me, No one has actually gotten stuck in there for a couple hundred years at least. You'll be fine, because in mana, all you have to do is trust the Force to find your crystal. I can't tell you how that will go. It's different for everyone. Kaz looked mildly cheered by this information, but was still leery about the whole thing. Well, I guess that's all right. They came to the training room before long and found it only sparsely populated. There was one squad over by the hand-to-hand mats running drills, but the open space where they usually ran blaster drills was unoccupied and would make a good place for a spar. Ahsoka led him over to the middle between a few stacks of large, damaged crates that were used for cover in the drills themselves. Ahsoka walked a few paces away from Kaz, unclipped her lightsaber from her belt, and bowed. Kaz hastily copied her and then slipped into his preferred Beskad-ready stance, still more comfortable with that than Cho, even though he'd gotten good enough at the first form that Master Obi-Wan had started working with him on Ataru, saying it would likely be a good form for him while he was still short, as the aerial moves would allow him to even the playing field against an opponent with a height advantage. Ahsoka lit her saber and settled into her usual reverse grip of Xian. When she saw what Kaz was doing, she frowned. "What form is that?" "I don't recognize it." "Beskad," Kaz said, also igniting his green training blade. "Oh, that's that Mandalorian sword thing, right?" "Yep." Kaz didn't give her a chance to respond, instead launching into a quick, brutal attack. Ahsoka yelped, hurriedly bringing her saber up to block, and the fight was on. Kaz didn't let up an inch, realizing in short order that her preferred form favored attacking, unlike his master's more conservative Soresu. Despite that, Ahsoka managed to hold him back by sheer virtue of her much greater experience and her strange reverse grip. Like lightning flashes, their blades cut through the air as they danced across the floor of the training room. Ahsoka caught on to Kaz's tactics quickly and pressed back with her own snapping series of attacks, forcing Kaz around the back of an old crate. Noticing he was being boxed in, Kaz leapt into the air, landing lightly on top of one of the shipping containers. Ahsoka jumped up after him and attacked in an impressive display of agility. Kaz swung for her head, then launched into the air again, landing on a new crate and dropping into an Ataru-ready stance instead, saber held in front of him in two hands, feet shoulder-width, and the Force coiled around him like a stalking loth cat. "Oh, don't think you can run from me," Ahsoka taunted him from the other crate. She crouched low, blade held to the side in a reverse grip, smirked, and then barreled through the air after him. "Who says I'm running?" Kaz grunted out, blade flashing back and forth as he blocked Ahsoka's powerful strikes. Suddenly, he spun in, ducking into her guard like he'd done to his master, and scored a direct hit to her shoulder. "Criff!" she yelped, back flipping off the crate and down to the floor, hissing at the sting in her shoulder from where Kaz's training blade had caught her. Kaz swooped down after her, flipping through the air and leading with his saber aimed again for her unprotected side. The young Togruta barely blocked the hit, her own emerald blade raised above her head in a two-handed grip. Kicking out with the Force, she pushed Kaz off of her, causing him to fly through the air and land harshly on his back. His armor cushioned the bulk of the blow, and he kipped up, then settled into his master's favored stance. Master Obi-Wan had not taught him Soresu yet, but he had seen the older Jedi use it many times already, and the Force seemed to sing around him when he moved into the opening pose. Ahsoka laughed. "How many lightsaber forms do you know?" "Just these." Kaz laughed right back, grin splitting his face. "Well, here goes. Xian and Gem." So were the direct antithesis of the form Kaz had chosen for this round, and when Ahsoka's attack crashed into his very inexperienced defense, that became immediately apparent. Kaz was able to keep her backing away like his master had done to him, drawing on his combat experience on Kamino and what he'd seen his master do. Their blades locked, hissing and spitting in that characteristic lightsaber hum, and Ahsoka grinned at him over them. Her blue eyes were shining with a predatory satisfaction that Kaz felt himself mirror. Remembering his fight with Ventress, Kaz angled his blade down and away, breaking the lock and causing Ahsoka to stumble forward, off balance. Kaz took the opportunity and pushed out at her with the Force, sending the other Padawan flying and watching as she somersaulted in the air to land on her feet like a tuca. She smirked at him but didn't pause, coming back with another slicing attack, and they were off, trading blows and shifting all around the open space of the training room. The rest of the ship fell from Kaz's awareness, and his world narrowed to Ahsoka, her saber, and their fight. Arms burning, chest heaving, sweat running down the back of his neck, Kaz fought. He was starting to tire, as was Ahsoka, but she was a year and a half older than him, taller, and had more muscle mass than he did. Knowing he needed to do something to end the stalemate, Kaz jumped, doing a perfect Ataru flip over Ahsoka's head and coming in for chest blow, only to get kicked in the chest, knocked to the floor, and his lightsaber yanked from his hand in his distraction. He hit the decking with a rough exhalation and just laid there a moment, absorbing the soothing cool from the durasteel under his back and thighs. Footsteps echoed, and suddenly the artificial light from above was blocked by Ahsoka's head. She smirked down at him, a lightsaber in each hand and the backs of her wrists resting on her hips. Kaz just groaned, letting his arms splay out across the floor. "I won," she said smugly. Kaz nodded, panting, his chest rising and falling swiftly. "Yup," he gasped out. "You really did." She reached out a hand after she clipped her lightsaber to her belt, and Kaz grabbed it, allowing her to pull him to his feet. She handed his blade back to him without preamble and smiled at him. "I really had to work for it, though." "You were pretty good." Kaz grinned back at her and clipped his own training saber back to its usual spot on his left hip. Thanks. I've been training pretty hard at it, I can tell," Ahsoka said. Both of their comlinks started to flash, stopping their conversation in its tracks. Kaz answered his first, and the small blue form of his master hovered over his vambrace. "Ah, Kaz, I'm glad I got you," Obi-Wan said, his arms crossed and a considering look on his face. "We are about to be heading back to the negotiator to get underway." "Is Ahsoka there with you still?" "Yes, Master." Kaz turned, getting the both of them into the frame of the holocall. "Hello, Master Kenobi," Ahsoka greeted with a quick bow. "Hello, Padawan Tano." Obi-Wan smiled briefly at her, then was all business once again. "Anakin wants to see you in the hangar. There's a meeting with the pilots you need to be present for." "Yes, Master, I will head down there now." Ahsoka bowed again, then turned to Kaz and grinned. "Thank you for the spar, and I can't wait until we can do that again." "Yes, same." "Good luck with this mission," Kaz grinned back at her. "May the Force be with you, and with you." With that, Ahsoka dashed off towards the door, leaving Kaz and Obi-Wan to their conversation. "So we're heading back to our ship?" "Yes." "We are taking the fleet to chase down that new ship and its weapon," Obi-Wan answered. "I will meet you in the shuttle bay, Padawan, as soon as I round up Cody." Kaz winced. "He won't want to leave Wolfie. We can just as easily take Wolfie with us if needed." "Oh yeah, that's true." "All right, I'll see you in the shuttle bay, Master," Kaz said with an easy shrug. "Thank you, Padawan." Obi-Wan smiled at him, then ended the transmission, leaving Kaz alone in the training room. Kaz sighed and dropped his arm, looking around him to find that there was a collection of brothers looking at him from the hand-to-hand combat mats. Curiosity piqued. Kaz wandered over to them, knowing he had a few minutes while his master worked out some details with Cody. There were 3 of them total. One had the Republic emblem tattooed across his face, one had a set of lines running down his face with a right angle above his right eye, and the third looked like a regulation uniform diagram. Everything about him was done up according to the rules. He didn't have any markings, his hair with the regulation style, and his armor was stark white. Kaz recognized one of them as Lieutenant Jesse, but he did not know the other 2. "Sukui Vode," Kaz greeted as he arrived. "Hey, kid," Jesse said, reaching out a hand to clasp Kaz's arm quickly. "That was some spar you just had." "Ahsoka is really good," Kaz agreed, grinning at the older trooper. "That was hard work, but fun." He nodded at the other 2 troopers standing silently by Jesse. "Hi, I'm Kaz. Nice to meet you." "I'm Hardcase," the one with the shaved head and line said. He smirked at Kaz. "You were something else, but Commander Tano was pretty tough." "That looked like best God," the last trooper said. His face was blank, like he hadn't figured out how expressions worked yet. "Some of it was," Kaz agreed easily. He could sense this trooper's awkwardness through the Force, and in his stiff manner. "What's your name?" "Dogma," he answered after a brief pause. His eyes narrowed and looked Kaz up and down critically. "Why do you have a lightsaber?" Kaz chucked and rubbed the back of his head, slightly baffled by the question. I'm General Kenobi's Padawan." His brows drew together, and he gave Dogma a considering look. "I thought everyone knew that by now." "I know that you have the Force," Dogma dismissed with a scoff. He crossed his arms and regarded Kaz with reproach. "But you're a clone. You shouldn't be here. You should be back on Kamino and cadet training where you belong." "What?" "Dogma," Jesse snapped, jumping into their conversation. Seriously? Come on, Vought, lighten up. I'm a Jedi Padawan," Kaz ground out, hands on his hips and eyes flashing in challenge. "I belong right here with a lightsaber in my hands. The regulations state, yeah, criff those," Kaz interrupted hotly. "The entire Jedi Council said I could. That's all I care about, and it's all you should care about too." Dogma's eyes went round at that revelation, and the argument drained out of him to be replaced with a strange kind of awe. "They did?" Kaz's confrontational stance softened, and he relaxed. He gave Dogma a shaky smile. Yeah, they did. He scrubbed a hand through his hair and took a closer look at Dogma. You must be pretty new. Yeah, he just got here 2 days ago, Hardcase said with a roll of his eyes. Been pretty much just like this the whole time, Kaz grinned at him. Ah, you'll be fine, Dogma. The 501s will take good care of you. He hooked a thumb over his shoulder. I have to go. The negotiator is getting ready to jump to light speed with the fleet. It was nice meeting you, though. You too, Dogma said, still looking a little poleaxed. Bye, Jesse. Bye, kid. With one last wave, Kaz turned and sprinted towards the exit, intent upon joining his master in the shuttle bay. Kaz met his master and Cody in the hangar bay and was mildly surprised to see that Commander Wolfie and the other survivors were not there with them. When he asked Cody, he was informed that Wolf elected to stay on the Resolute because his general had, and he did not want to leave the Keldor alone with Skywalker. Kaz could understand that motivation, but he could also tell that Cody wasn't particularly happy with this turn of events. However, he trusted Rex to handle it, so he had left with General Kenobi and Kaz with only a token protest. The shuttle ride back to the negotiator was swift, and they were disembarking in the familiar hangar before Kaz even had a chance to get bored. Osprey and Oddball were there, running herd on their pilots, crew chiefs, and mechanics, getting everything set up and squared away, the possibility of a space battle hanging heavily over them all. Kaz followed Cody and Master Obi-Wan to the bridge, listening in and watching as his master handled several holocalls along the way from Admiral Yularen, Master Windu, and the GAR intelligence admiral from the briefing during Chio. Apparently, the massive ship the Separatists had designed was named the Malevolence, and the weapon attached to it was a giant ion cannon. General Skywalker had been tasked with the destruction of this ship and its weapon, and had been authorized to take a strike force of bombers, Shadow Squadron, to accomplish this task. Arriving on the bridge, Master Obi-Wan and Cody made a beeline for the holotable, and Lieutenant Hap was already hard at work, directing his staff and pinging the officers for updates. Hap, what do we got? Obi-Wan asked, sidling up next to the soft-shell trooper. Moderately bad news, General. Hap looked up from his console, expression pinched. We have new info from Intel that the enemy fleet has attacked our medical convoy near the Rendelia system. That's not good. Obi-Wan jumped into action, pulling up the most recent data burst onto the main holotable. A wireframe of the Malevolence was depicted destroying the small convoy of aid ships. Obi-Wan's jaw clenched. This is low, even for them. Our main medical aid station is in that system, Cody said, urgency coloring his voice and making it sharp. We need to warn them. We need to get the injured Vought off of that station as a precaution, Obi-Wan said, mind already spinning over ways to make that happen. An idea occurred to him, and his head snapped up. Cody, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that aid station near the Naboo system? Yes, Cody's worried expression morphed into one of determination. You think they would help? One way to find out, Obi-Wan said, turning his attention to Hap. Lieutenant, give me a line to the Naboo on the double. Yes, sir. The holotable lit up with the red flashing call connecting light, and it chirped out a series of dings and beeps as they all waited anxiously around it. Finally, it lit up green, and in the center of the table was a blue representation of the Queen's chief aide. She was dressed in the traditional garb of the handmaidens, and her face was partly in shadow from the hood. General Kenobi, what can I do for you? We need some assistance with our medical aid station, Obi-Wan said without preamble. It is currently being threatened by a separatist warship. General Grievous aims to destroy it, and the some 60,000 troopers currently recovering there. We need your help with an evacuation as soon as possible. Oh, my word. Of course. I will tell Queen Niutni right away. You will have your aid ships, Master Jedi. Thank you, handmaiden, Obi-Wan said. They exchanged mutual nods, and then the connection was cut. Not wasting a beat, he turned to Hap. Get us underway, Hap. Sync the fleet to our Navi computer and get us there with all available speed. Yes, sir. Hap nodded and made his way to the front of the bridge, where all other navigators and officers sat. Sync with the fleet. Get a hold of the Resolute and ping Admiral Yularen. I want this ship jumping to hyperspeed on the double, men. Resolute sent back. They are waiting on the launch of Shadow Squadron, then we'll be ready to go. They advise we get underway without them, sir, one of the soft-shell officers reported to Hap. Hap nodded. Tell them they have 15 minutes or we are leaving without them. Yes, sir. More minutes of flurried activity flew by before General Kenobi got a notification from Admiral Yularen that he had contacted the medical station and that he was urging them to evacuate. Realizing that he hadn't told the larger fleet that he'd called the Naboo for assistance, Obi-Wan hurriedly joined the call. Admiral Yularen's blue hologram appeared first, followed by Nala Se's. Obi-Wan would admit to a flare of surprise at seeing her there at the aid station. He had the fleeting thought that perhaps their encounter had changed the scientist's mind. "Won't stand a chance against that battleship." The Admiral was mid-sentence when Obi-Wan connected with them. He noticed the General first, General Kenobi. "Do you have any updates?" Obi-Wan schooled his features, tucking away his surprise at seeing Nala Se for later. He could feel Cody's laser-burn gaze on the back of his skull and Kaz's curious one. "Ah, yes, Admiral. Dr. Se. I have contacted the Naboo. They agreed to send ships to help with the evacuation. The Negotiator, along with the 7th Sky Corps, are also en route." "Thank you, Master Jedi." Nala Se inclined her head slightly. Her eyes settled on Obi-Wan, and she looked like she wanted to continue but was unsure. After a moment, she shifted, standing a little straighter. "Tell me, Master Kenobi, what has become of CT-9212? I have heard some interesting rumors." Obi-Wan kept his face blank, but internally he felt like running a victory lap. He crossed his arms and let his fingers rest on his elbows. "Kaz is, well, Doctor. His training is progressing rapidly. He is an excellent student." "I see," she replied at length. Her face was hard to read, unlike the last time they had interacted with each other. "I am pleased to hear I was wrong. I look forward to his success as a Jedi." Utter shock radiated out from every trooper in hearing distance of her words, and Obi-Wan was not able to keep that feeling entirely off his face. His eyebrows rose, but he otherwise did not react to that statement. "Thank you. I am sure he will accomplish great things." "Indeed." Nala Se nodded again and focused on Admiral Yularen. "Keep us appraised of the situation, Admiral. We will proceed with the evacuation." "Course." "Resolute out." When Yularen left the call, it ended and plunged the bridge of the Negotiator into a weighted silence. Obi-Wan turned from the holotable to face Cody, who was staring at him with an inscrutable look on his face. His commander's presence in the Force was a tangled web of shock, anger, disgust, and hopefulness, his shields flaring outward with his discomfort. The troops around them were similar, but none were as visceral as what was coming from Cody. "She," Kaz broke the silence first. His eyes were wide, confused, and he fixed them on Obi-Wan. "She changed her mind?" "It appears she did," Obi-Wan said, hand coming up to rub along his beard as he stared sightlessly at the wall beyond Kaz's shoulders. Kaz gulped, then his expression hardened, hands clenching into fists. "It was only because she realized that I was valuable." "It's not because she cared about me as a person." Obi-Wan heaved a tired sigh. "Perhaps, but there's no way for us to know that. I think it's pretty obvious," Cody ground out. "She's always been that way," he rolled his eyes and scoffed. "She'd fight for the ones that were useful, powerful, her pet projects. All the others were defective." Obi-Wan could clearly sense there was a specific example and experience that gave Cody this insight, but now was not the time to get it out of his commander. "You'll have to tell me about that later, Cody." "I would like to know." "But now isn't the time," Cody agreed, expression clearing and Force presence once more focused on the task before them. "Unfortunately," Obi-Wan sighed and turned back to the console attached to the holotable and continued going over the plans and information that Yularen had sent him regarding Shadow Squadron. Behind him, Kaz and Cody moved off to an unoccupied corner of the bridge, Cody's hand on Kaz's shoulder and his sympathetic gaze locked onto the cadet. Kaz still looked a little shell-shocked and unsure and felt entirely wrong-footed in the Force. He was radiating disquiet. Cody put his other hand on Kaz's other shoulder, letting his thumbs move soothingly in the space between the cadet's chest plate and his neck. "You all right, kid?" he rumbled out, voice pitched low to keep it from carrying across the bridge. "I dunno." Kaz swallowed thickly, eyes fixed on the Durasteel decking below their feet. "It feels like everything I went through was all for nothing. And I can't decide if I want to scream or cry." "Don't do either," Cody said after a moment, voice a comforting timbre. "She doesn't deserve your time," Kaz sighed, shoulders sagging a little. He locked golden amber eyes onto Cody's. "I have to let it go into the Force. I can't hold on to this resentment, Cody." "It won't help." It was Cody's turn to sigh, recognizing the wisdom in that statement, but liking it not at all. "Yeah, you're probably right, Kaz. You don't think so?" Kaz asked, cocking his head to the side and regarding Cody calculatingly. "It doesn't matter what I think about it, Kazika." Cody let go of Kaz's shoulders and stepped back, running a terse hand through his hair. "You need to do the right Jedi thing." "That's what's best for you. It should be best for you too," Kaz replied, hands gesturing up in a shrug. "No, it shouldn't," Cody disagreed, taking care to keep his voice soft, not wanting to draw attention to their debate. I'm too set in my ways. You have a chance to change. You're right, and I didn't mean to distract from that or to imply otherwise. Kaz crossed his arms over his chest, letting his weight rest mostly on his right leg, and glared at Cody. I disagree with your assessment of yourself. He rolled his eyes and dropped his arms. But I'm not going to argue with you right now. Cody scoffed out a surprised laugh, eyebrows jumping up, smirk twitching at his lips. Oh, you aren't? No. I'll argue with you after we destroy this epic ship we're chasing, Kaz replied, walking back over to the main holotable, intent on helping his master. Cody just shook his head and followed him. When he arrived, Obi-Wan was already mid-call again, this time with Skywalker. He settled in next to his general and turned his not inconsiderable focus back onto this mission. They needed to catch this ship and stop it from destroying that medical satellite. If the malevolent Sith succeeded, it would be a huge blow to the Grand Army of the Republic, in more ways than just warm bodies to fill trooper squads. I hope you know what you're doing, Anakin, Obi-Wan said, sighing and rubbing a hand between his brows. Well, if I don't, I won't be around to hear your "I told you so," Anakin replied with mock enthusiasm. That doesn't inspire me with confidence. Obi-Wan crossed his arms and shook his head. Well, take your shortcut. We'll be right behind you on the long road. He reached out and jabbed an accusing finger towards Anakin's holo form. You had better beat us there, Anakin. I will, don't worry. See you on the other side, Obi-Wan. What followed after that was their tensest hyperspace run to date. Everyone was on edge, trying to wring every ounce of speed they could from the ship to beat General Grievous to the medical station. Kaz found himself helping the bridge crew, running messages back and forth, assisting with information updates and data bursts, and tracking on Shadow Squadron. That was, until Skywalker took them through Balmorra Run and they dropped off of all the scanners when they entered the nebula. His master had been concerned yet resigned, and just braced for the coming battle. Their hyperspace route took them around the nebula, but because they had less mass than the Malevolence, they were able to cut it a little closer, and since they had started at a disadvantage, current estimates had the 7th Sky Corps arriving just as General Grievous would. Not ideal, but certainly better than arriving after their enemy by far. Kaz could feel the anticipation that had begun to permeate the ship keenly, sensing it in every motion and spoken word of the ship's crew. Midway through the journey, his master and Cody retreated to the small ready room off the bridge to hash out some other details with Yularen, but Kaz stayed on the bridge, helping Lieutenant Hap manage the organized chaos. He found, after spending so long working side by side with Cody, that he'd managed to absorb at least some of the commander's skills in leading, and he could tell Hap was appreciative of his assistance. Of course, that was until a call came through from the High Council and Kaz was the only one around to answer it. You got this, Boudica? Hap asked, looking over Kaz's shoulder at the flashing console, hopefully. Kaz nodded jerkily, desperately trying to remember every single byte of information about Jedi customs and courtesies that he'd learned from his flash modules. Yeah, Hap, I can do it. Put them through. Hap shook his head with a smirk but sent the transmission through. To Kaz's immense relief, only Master Yoda and Master Windu appeared in blue holograms, and he felt some of the anxiety leave him. He had met both of them in person and knew that he could handle this. Squaring his shoulders and bowing briefly, Kaz straightened up and crossed his arms like he'd seen his master do thousands of times. He reached into the Force and pulled it around him like a comforting blanket. Master Yoda, Master Windu, hello. What can I do for you? Kaz asked, polite yet blank expression on his face. Padawan Kaz, where's your master? Mace Windu barely checked the urge to sigh and roll his eyes. He clearly suspected some harebrained scheme was afoot. He's in the ready room with Cody. They're on the horn to Admiral Yularen and the Resolute, sir. They're still trying to remotely coordinate the evacuation, masters, Kaz reported, voice strong and sure. Disturb him we will not. Handle this you can, Padawan, Master Yoda said, a pleased look on his face. We received word that Shadow Squadron has gone dark, Master Windu began. What do you know about this? Kaz winced. General Skywalker decided to take them through Balmorra Run, sir. They went dark as soon as they entered the nebula. He's taken a shortcut, trying to beat General Grievous there and ambush him. Reckless, this plan is? Yoda's ears drooped, and his hands twisted around the top of his Geimer stick. Yes, Master Yoda, I know, but if he succeeds, I think it'll be worth it, Kaz said bravely, trying to defend his Padawan brother. He and Anakin may not know each other very well yet, but the older Jedi had been polite to him for the entire time they were stuck on Christophsis. I suppose that is a consideration. Please keep this council appraised of your progress. Kaz breathed out a short gust of air, fighting to keep his relief off his face and out of his Force presence. Yes, Masters, of course. What's your ETA to the medical station? Master Windu continued, tabling the matter of Anakin Skywalker for later. Current estimates have us arriving in approximately 1 hour, Master Windu, Kaz replied, reaching out and hitting a few buttons on the holotable to send their updated course projection to the temple. I sent a data burst with our current navigational information. I'll have one of the bridge crew update you every 15 minutes, sir, if that'll be acceptable. Master Windu raised an impressed eyebrow and conferred silently with Yoda before nodding. Yes, Padawan, that will be acceptable. Let you get back to your duties, we will, Padawan. May the Force be with you, Master Yoda said, face lightening and his eyes twinkling as much as they could via blue hologram. Thank you, Masters. May the Force be with you as well, Kaz bowed, and the transmission cut. Soon as it was done, he leaned heavily onto the holotable, all the tension whooshing out of him like air from a balloon. Footsteps echoed, and Hap stepped up next to him and put a hand on the back of Kaz's neck, giving him a light squeeze. Kaz straightened and grinned up at the older soft-shell trooper. He laughed shakily and scrubbed a nervous hand through his hair, the other resting on the tops of his utility belt. Nice work, kid, Hap said with a smile. Thanks. Kaz shook his head and shifted his weight slightly. That was scary. You did fine. Obi-Wan's voice held a smile even though one was barely on his face. He walked over to Kaz, Cody just behind. Good work, Padawan. Thanks, Master. Kaz's eyes narrowed and he crossed his arms. Were you there the whole time? No, just caught the end on our way out of the ready room, Obi-Wan answered, waving away Kaz's suspicion easily. He crossed his arms and let one hand play with his beard as he eyed Kaz with a considering gaze. I suppose as my yeoman I can let you handle more tasks like that to give you the experience you'll need for when you're ready to lead a squad of your own. Kaz's jaw dropped, and he looked overwhelmed. More of that? In my own squad, Jedi Padawans are commanders in the GAR, kid, Cody said, nudging Kaz's shoulder companionably. That'll be you one day. Kaz's jaw snapped shut, and he let both his hands rest on the tops of his belt pouches. You're the commander of the 212th. I don't want you posting. It's yours. You earned it. Relax, Kaz, Cody laughed and ruffled the cadet's hair. You aren't going to get it. The General and I are thinking of giving you ghost company when you're ready. That will not be for a while yet, but I see no reason why you cannot start learning what you need now, Obi-Wan replied with a smile. What do Waxer and Helix think about it? Kaz asked, still not appeased with that answer. I won't take if they don't agree. Helix has plenty to keep him busy as chief medical officer, and I would not sign off on his command of ghost company regardless of what he wanted, Obi-Wan immediately said. I suppose we'll have a chat with Waxer when it comes time. I'm comfortable with that, Master, Kaz replied easily. He shrugged. Yeah, I'm not a regular Jedi. I'm a Vod. I don't want to upset the others if I can help it. I agree, Cody said with an approving nod. I'll get with Waxer and Boyle. Don't worry, kid. General, we've got that quarter-hour ETA update for you. Hap came over and interrupted them. He'd long since gotten over jumping into the middle of conversations on the bridge, knowing that vital information could not wait. Perfect. Thank you, Hap. Did you have one of your men transmit that to the temple as well? Yes, sir. Nothing left now but to wait, Cody said, his impatience bleeding out into the Force. I dislike inaction, Obi-Wan added, arms crossed and eyes fixed on the holotable readouts. Yeah. They didn't say much after that, the bridge once more descending into a tense state of activity, everyone trying to find something to do to occupy their time. Obi-Wan and Cody settled around the large holotable in the middle of the bridge, going over what schematics GAAR intelligence was able to liberate from the Separatists about the ship itself, looking for weak points and places to target when the inevitable space battle erupted. Their current focus was on making sure none of the enemy ships were able to slip past them and attack the defenseless medical station. The evacuation was slow going, and there were still tens of thousands of lives in danger. Finally, after what felt like years but was merely another 40 or so minutes, Hap gave them the 1-minute warning for dropping out of light speed. Obi-Wan moved to stand at the bow of the bridge, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the transperisteel viewport in front of him. Cody walked up to stand on his right, his stance similar to his general's. His Force presence was focused, his shields their usual spiny state, and he was uncharacteristically open to the Force, pressing, pulling, trying to glean any information he could about their upcoming battle. Obi-Wan found himself impressed by this. He reached out for the Force himself, following along what Cody had done, reinforcing it and finding new and different nuances his commander had missed. They worked together like a well-oiled machine, like they'd been doing this all their lives, and not for just a few months. Cody suddenly reached for him, a straining feeling running down their bond, and Obi-Wan reached back before he could help himself. Humming between them, their connection was running wide open for the first time in a week, and Obi-Wan could feel all of Cody's turmoil and insecurity from the last few days keenly. He pushed a strong feeling of reassurance and care down their bond, trying to smooth over some of his commander's rough edges, and felt Cody relax minutely next to him as some of the spikes on his shields retreated. Obi-Wan had deduced that Cody's spiny shield shell was his commander's neutral setting, but when those spines moved into a spiky weapon, he knew Cody was either in trouble or about to start trouble. They shared a brief look and a small smile just as the ship dropped out of hyperspace. "Coming out of lightspeed in 3, 2, 1, the helmsman called out. As they lurched into real space, they were greeted with the sight of Shadow Squadron engaging the Malevolence. The bombers with Anakin in the lead and Plo Koon bringing up the rear had already engaged, and Obi-Wan noted they had just diverted their original course. No longer was Anakin aiming for the bridge in an ambitious attempt to destroy General Grievous, but he was instead heading for that ion cannon. The cannon that was now powering up and aiming for the medical station. "Carking hell, they're aiming for the station," Cody exclaimed, noticing the problem right away. He turned to the helmsman and started barking out orders. "Bring us about. Put us between the station and that weapon. I want shields thrown out as far as possible to absorb as much of that pulse as we can. Pull the rest of the fleet clear," Obi-Wan hastily added. "We'll need the rest of those ships functioning if we want to take out Grievous." "Yes, sir. On it, General. Brace for impact and call Captain Forge." "We'll need repair teams on standby to get main power back." Cody stalked over to the front of the bridge, eyes on the console and the readouts it contained, Obi-Wan right behind him. Kaz jumped to follow his request, keying up the captain on his van-brace. "On it, Commander." Cody's eyes were fixed on the viewport, body whipcord tense as he braced for impact, the force absolutely howling through his blood. Obi-Wan was the same, arms crossed, fists clenched, back ramrod straight, and every ounce of his focus on that ship. Incandescent, crackling electricity sparked up from the center of the cannon, and Cody imagined he could feel the hair on the back of his neck stand on end from the static. For a moment, the ion cannon flared a malevolent white before it exploded in a brilliant cloud of orange and red flames. Silence prevailed on the bridge, all eyes fixed on the sight in front of them. Like a dam breaking, a cheer went up from the men, and Kaz high-fived Hap, who was next to him at the holotable. Obi-Wan and Cody shared relieved laughter, and the commander knocked his shoulder into Obi-Wan's companionably. The gesture was returned by a grinning Jedi Master. "General Skywalker certainly enjoys cutting things close, sir," Cody said with a shake of his head. "Rest assured, I did not teach him that," Obi-Wan replied with a chuckle. He turned, waving Cody to follow him, and approached the holotable. Kaz and Hap were standing near. "Hap, can you connect me to Anakin?" "Already on it, sir," Hap said with a smirk. To prove him right, the call connected. "Anakin, do you read me?" "Yeah, I read you, Obi-Wan." The connection was voice only on their end, but to their ears, Anakin sounded weary. The journey must not have been an easy one. Obi-Wan sighed. "Congratulations on your victory. Our scanners are currently indicating the weapon is completely inoperable." "I didn't manage to get Grievous, Master." Anakin sighed heavily. "Sound the line." "And I lost half the squad. We're going to land on the Resolute and get some rest while we can." "Good idea. I'll take it from here, Anakin. Just be ready. I'm sure we'll need you before long." "Good copy, Obi-Wan. See you soon." The call ended, and Obi-Wan made his way back to the front of the bridge. "Helmsman, all ahead full. We are not letting Grievous slip through our fingers today." "Aye, aye, General. Kaz, send the report to the Council. Let them know the aid station is safe and we are in pursuit of the enemy ship." "You got it, Master." Kaz darted to the holotable, queuing up the call to the Council. Following Anakin's success, the mood on the bridge was much lighter, and every trooper was dialed into the pursuit of the Malevolence, ready to leverage their advantage. They were ready and willing and out for blood. Every trooper on board had taken personal offense at Grievous's attempt to destroy their injured brothers, and none of them would give an inch. The pursuit, for the moment, went off without a hitch.